The 5 poisons of the mind in Buddhism. The 5 poisons of the mind, causes of suffering. Ignorance, attachment, aversion, pride, envy. All living beings seek happiness and strive to avoid suffering. This deep-seated desire is universal, whether it be a human aspiring for a better life or a cockroach desperately fleeing from an approaching slipper. In this sense, we are all united in our wish to escape suffering. The problem, however, lies in our inability to identify the true causes of suffering. As the Buddhist philosopher and practitioner Shantideva aptly noted, wishing to be free from suffering, they rush headlong into it. And in their desire for happiness, out of delusion, they destroy it as though it were their enemy. Why does this happen? The issue is that we often fail to recognize the true causes of our suffering. A crude but clear example is the withdrawal symptoms after alcohol consumption, commonly known as a hangover. People often attempt to alleviate this suffering with another drink instead of resolving to quit alcohol altogether. It is akin to an old joke: let's exclude tangerines from our New Year's feast this time. We really need to find out why our heads hurt so much in the morning. Unfortunately, people laugh at things they should actually contemplate deeply. Popular culture often trivializes destructive behaviors through humor, normalizing what is, in reality, harmful. However, the problem runs much deeper. Our failure to understand the true causes of suffering often leads us to repeat the same mistakes, trapping us in a vicious cycle of suffering, all while blaming the world around us. A clear example is a person who consumes fast food for years and, when faced with health issues, blames the environment instead of their own choices. The 5 poisons of the mind. Buddhism has extensively explored the root causes of suffering. In fact, the study of suffering, its causes, and the means to end it is the foundation upon which the teachings of the Buddha were originally built. Hence, Buddhism has perhaps made more progress in understanding suffering than many other philosophical traditions. According to Buddhist philosophy, there are so-called poisons of the mind. Some schools identify 3 poisons, while others extend the list to 5. Here, we will examine the 5 poisons. It is believed that the fundamental poison, the root of all suffering, is ignorance. Ignorance. Ignorance is the root of all suffering. This does not refer to a lack of knowledge about Fermat's theorem or Newton's laws, though such ignorance can also cause problems. In the context of Buddhist philosophy, ignorance refers to fundamental misconceptions about the nature of existence and the self. Buddha Shakyamuni once stated, "The gravest ignorance a being can fall into is disbelief in the law of karma." Interestingly, the law of karma closely resembles Newton's third law: every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Thus, physics and philosophy are sometimes deeply interconnected. A school physics textbook might provide answers to profound questions. Why did Buddha consider ignorance of karma to be the most dangerous misconception? The reason is that by committing harmful actions, a person creates the causes of their own suffering. If they do not believe in or understand karma, they have no chance of changing their life for the better. This aligns with Shantideva's words: wishing to be free from suffering, they rush headlong into it. Another aspect of ignorance is the failure to recognize that all beings are interconnected. Harming others is ultimately harming oneself, while benefiting others also benefits oneself. Ignorance is also an illusion of duality, the false perception that reality is divided into black and white, good and bad. The truth is that everything in the world is neutral, only our restless minds create the illusion of duality. This dualistic perception leads to the emergence of 2 other poisons: attachment and aversion. Attachment. Attachment arises from ignorance. The division of perceived reality into pleasant and unpleasant objects leads to attachment to pleasant objects and the desire to possess them. Buddha taught that all is suffering. Why? A simple example is food. When hungry, we suffer from hunger. When we eat too much, we suffer from overeating. The secret to fleeting happiness lies in balancing these 2 forms of suffering. Attachment leads to suffering because everything in this world is impermanent. Any object of attachment will inevitably be destroyed, or we will grow tired of it. A classic example is a child who has everything they want yet quickly becomes bored with even the most exciting toys, constantly desiring something new. Desire is insatiable. It is like trying to quench thirst with salt water. When we are attached to something, we suffer either from its absence or from the inability to enjoy it indefinitely. Aversion. Aversion, hatred, anger, is another poison of the mind arising from ignorance. Just as pleasant things create attachment, unpleasant things foster aversion, hatred, and anger. Yet, as mentioned before, dualistic perception is illusory. Consider the seasons. Some people love the summer heat, while others despise it and prefer autumn. In reality, neither summer nor autumn causes happiness or suffering, our attitudes toward them do. Modern society is plagued by a pandemic of hatred. Media manipulation can incite people who have never met to hate each other simply because of differences in race, nationality, or ideology. This benefits certain powers, but the deeper truth remains: hatred harms the one who harbors it. As Buddha said, anger is like holding a burning coal with the intent of throwing it at someone. You are the one who gets burned first. Pride. Pride also stems from ignorance. The truth is that all beings are equal at their core. Every soul, or Jivatma, possesses the same fundamental qualities. The only differences lie in accumulated experience and individual karmic lessons. Therefore, looking down on someone for their shortcomings is irrational. They are simply at a different stage of growth. The Buddhist concept of Buddha nature teaches that everyone has the potential to become enlightened. A bodhisattva known as never despising demonstrated this by always addressing others with reverence, even when they insulted him. He believed that all beings would eventually become Buddhas. Envy. Envy is the reverse of pride. While pride involves overestimating oneself and belittling others, envy stems from underestimating oneself and feeling inferior to others. As Freud wisely said, the only person you should compare yourself to is who you were in the past. Every individual follows their own path. If someone has achieved more, it simply means they have put in more effort or created the necessary karmic conditions. Instead of resenting others, we should focus on our own growth. Conclusion. These 5 poisons are fundamental causes of suffering. However, they are not the only ones. They generate countless other sources of suffering. The key takeaway is that we are responsible for our own suffering. To change our lives, we must first change our thoughts and perceptions, then our actions and lifestyle. Blaming the world and others is a losing strategy. Taking responsibility allows us to regain control. Just as the solution to a draft is closing a window rather than complaining, the path to happiness lies in eliminating the causes of suffering and cultivating the causes of happiness.